10 people being called to Indian Island. Out of the first is Vera Claythorne, who is a very classy young lass and is to be the secretary for the Owens. The next is Dr. Armstrong, a naive and ominous surgeon. Next is the adventurous Philip Lombard, also the great Judge Justice Wargrave, and the respectable General MacArthur. Next is the godlike Anthony Marston, following is the upright Emily Brent. Next is the nonetheless ex-Inspector Blore. First on the island is the wonderful Rogers family, a very humble bunch. On Indian Island, things are too ominous and very queer. Throughout the people being called, how many will return? In the beginning, they were celebrating, thinking they were going to be living good at the side of the Owens, until a gramophone record plays and says the crimes of murder that these guests once committed. Anxiety thickens, and Mrs. Rogers has to take a rest, and Mr. Marston says with a grin, "The legal life's narrowing. I'm all in for crime. Here's to it." As he gulped down his drink, he appeared to be choking, and choking, and choking. His face went purple until he fell to the ground. 10 little Indian boys went out to dine. One choked himself, and then there were 9. The next morning, they were all willing to get to the boat that Fred Narracott was willing to provide, but no boat came. And Armstrong had a very unusual awakening by Rogers. Mrs. Rogers would not wake up. He checked her pulse, but found nothing. He said, "Sorry." 9 little Indian boys sat up very late. One overslept himself, and then there were 8. With 2 deaths in the span of about 1 day, everyone was startled. The oddest thing was the general, who was going on about how peaceful it was, went for a walk out to the beach, while the others were convinced that there was someone else on the island. So Armstrong, Blore, and Lombard decided to search the fatal island. Meanwhile, Vera went out for a stroll and met MacArthur, and he talked about, "None of us are going to leave this island. That's the plan. You know, of course, perfectly what perhaps why you can't understand is the relief." The general's words quite shocked Vera, enough so that she left. But when Blore, Armstrong, and Lombard conducted their search, they found that there were only 8 people on that island. But when supper came along and the gong was sounded, everyone was sounded to the meal. But all but one came, all but MacArthur. Where he was unknown. Armstrong went to look for him, but when he returned astonished and exasperated, and he shouted, "He's dead! The man's dead!" 8 little Indian boys traveling to Devon. One said he'd stay, and then there were 7. From close examination, Wargrave concluded that Mr. Owen is one of us. After the group had the breakthrough, they went on around asking questions to each one another. The fact that Blore had a revolver in his possession, and that many of them were well-known men and women, example for Mr. Armstrong and Blore, and Wargrave pointed out that the surgeons and judges and policemen have all gone mad before. They all qualified, every single one of them. Later that night, everyone was suspecting anyone anybody because they were all on their toes and antsy. Also, no one could be the murderer. Everyone was just too plausible to be the murderer. Rogers was fed up with the little China figures disappearing, and he was done with the murdering, so he locked them up in the cabinet, so it would be the last time they disappeared. Everyone woke up late that morning when they came out of their rooms. There was no breakfast ready made for them by Rogers. Where was the old fellow? He was found chopping sticks before the fire, and the large axe was just the right size to fit the large gash on the back of Roger's head. 7 little Indian boys chopping up sticks. One chopped himself in halves, and then there were 6. Rogers' death startled everyone, but they had more pressing matters at hand. So Vera and Emily Brent cooked breakfast. After they ate, but Miss Brent stayed in the kitchen. Everyone else sat in the other room, and Mrs. Brent started to hear a buzzing of a bee and a little prick on the neck. While she wasn't in the room, they raised suspicions about her, and as they went to call her into the room, they found her dead. 6 little Indian boys playing with a hive. A bumblebee stung one, and then there were 5. Out of suspicion, they searched one another's rooms, and they found that Dr. Armstrong's hypodermic needles were missing. The revolver of Lombard was missing. Everything that could be used to kill that had something to do with the rhyme was missing. After finding nothing, they settled down. While fighting, they figured out that the judge was not with them. They found him moments later wearing his judge uniform with the missing items. Armstrong went up to him, and he said with immediate lowering of voice, "He's been shot." 5 little Indian boys going in for law. One got in at Chancery, and then there were 4. After he was carried up to his room, they questioned, "Why didn't we hear the shot?" With everyone questioning how Wargrave came to death, they did not sleep well that night. With Vera thinking about Cyril, Laura thinking about how the revolver got there. Suddenly, he heard footsteps outside his door. He leaps out, seeing a mere glimpse of a figure by the doorway. He rushed out of his room and went to Vera's door. Armstrong's out of his room and went outside. Vera refused to come out of her room. He went to Lombard. The 2 spoke, and they decided to go look for him. They told Vera of their plan. Vera agreed to stop him if he returned. When they did say anything, Armstrong was disappeared. 4 little Indian boys going out to sea. A red herring swallowed one, and then there were 3. The 3, not knowing of Armstrong's death, had begun to think that he was the one murdering everyone, because they did not know where he went. They decided to stay outside, so they could see him coming from every direction, unlike in the house, until Blore had to go and get something from the house. Then it would just be Vera and Lombard. They talked for a while. Talked and talked, until they thought, Blore should have been back by now. But where has he gone? When Vera and Lombard went to the house to see what was going on, they saw by the front door Blore's body motionless. Right above it had a clock from the room above thrown at his head. 3 little Indian boys walking in the zoo. A big bear hugged one, and then there were 2. With the two wondering how Laura died, they wandered out to the cliffs and looked over. They saw something in the water. They went down to the cliff bed and saw it was Armstrong's body, mangled and beaten by the waves and the coast. And they thought to themselves, if Armstrong is dead, who killed Bloor? They carried his body all the way up to the house. And then Vera suddenly ran in front of Lombard and pointed his revolver, which he had in his pocket, at him. Lombard knew he only had two choices: either run and grab the gun quickly from Vera, or talk it over with her. Lombard was in an impatient mood, so he made a move to run, and Vera pulled the trigger. She shot him right in the head. Finally she said, "I'm free." Two little Indian boys sitting in the sun. One got frizzled up, and then there was one. Vera was hit with a blast of relief. Finally, it was over, she said. She walked up to the house. She said she was going to take a big rest. She didn't even care about anything else. While she was walking up the stairs, she dropped the revolver. Oh, she didn't even notice. She walked into her room. She saw the chair, and there was a rope hanging from the hook in her room. And she thought, Hugo, is this what you want? She stood on the chair. She fastened the rope around her neck, and she kicked the chair away. One little Indian boy left all alone. He went up and hanged himself, and then there were none. After Vera had finally strangled herself with the rope, Wargrave came out of the closet. He put aside the chair and walked downstairs. He picked up the gun on the stairs. He put on his uniform, created a contraption, and shot himself. When the police came to the island to figure out what had happened to the guests, they had found 10 dead bodies, all corresponding to the rhyme. They found no answers. There was no proof that anything or anyone had killed them. Nothing but themselves. This was written by Maggie. This was spoken by Michael, as you can tell. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Bye.